I remember when I was in Chicago with you, and
Yeah,
we drove by the ABT,
on the expressway. Yeah,
building.
yeah.
Yeah, on the expressway. And I remember you sharing with me, and this was something that stuck with me because I think it's really important and it's an important lesson. But you had shared that even though you guys were commission based sales,
Yep,
you would get probably even fired. I think you said
you
if you
would.
were to, ghost a person who was maybe looking for a really low end kind of an appliance and versus selling to someone who wanted, a new refrigerator and a whole new set for their
Right,
home. Like
right.
every client, had to have the same value. Can you speak to that? Because you could probably
Yeah, I
put it a
mean,
little bit more
it was.
eloquently than me.
I mean, really, if that story, you were fortunate to see it, and if people ever Google app and look at it, they'll see just this amazing. I mean, they send out 500 trucks, I think, every single day from one location. Remember, we drove for about a half a mile, and I'm like, that's still the warehouse, by the
Yeah.
way, of all the trucks. You're
Yeah, it
like,
was
like,
huge.
a minute and a half has passed at 70 miles an hour. No, that's still the warehouse. Okay, it's like an Amazon distribution center. It really was, right? Filled with trucks. Anyways, so and I know the whole family, they're wonderful people, and they taught me how to sell. Because what I learned was Bob App's family that started in 36 firmly believed every single person in there that's kind and decent and coming in, and because there's a lot of weird people that come into these stores with so much traffic, but good customers. If you have a 83-year-old lady who's in her nightgown that she goes to sleep in, but it doesn't matter. She's got curlers in her hair, and she's looking at a $92 microwave. Okay. And I know that over there in aisle three, I got the guy looking at the Sub-Zero for 6,000. Well, you don't have to be in the mortgage business to know that the commissions are a little different on these two products. But his theory was, and he walked the store, Bob App, very quiet. He had four sons. He walked the store. His 90-year-old mother was always walking the floor, and he was watching. And if you told that lady and you blew her off and said, I got to go, and didn't give her full respect, because you would get this lady, there's somebody, or a man, a 93-year-old man who's, whatever. I mean, they would want to know how all the buttons work. And you want to talk about frustration is in a sale is when somebody wants you to explain the keypad of a $90 microwave when you have someone that really wants to buy a $6,000 microwave and maybe walked in the store a month ago, is ready for you, but they want to get going because it's Joey's soccer lesson. And if you can't help us, we're just going to have someone else help us. Okay. So here I am explaining the keypad. And really the theory is this is your point, is that that person that I think is just standing there in their 30-year-old shirt and means nothing, okay? They actually mean everything. They mean everything to the world, because for all you know, they're the parent whose son is Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, that's worth $1 billion and could refer and open up a world of business to you. And that's what the point
Right.
you're trying to get me to. But I thought I would set it up a little bit, okay? And,
Yeah. No, well,
you know,
yeah, it's just such a good it's such a good lesson for sales because you just don't know who the person is. And sometimes someone calls you, like in our business, maybe they're calling about a HELOC. And they're like, well, I need a HELOC. And you're like, I don't really like
I
to
gotta
do
go. I'll
HELOCs.
see you later. I don't
Yeah.
do you. Yeah, boom.
But you don't know. They might own eight other properties, and they might have other stuff. They might be their brother, their
Right.
dad might be a big builder or something. Like you never know where relationships come from, and which is why it's so important to never be attached to the commission on any given transaction. It's about serving people, and the money comes by doing the right thing. And I just remember you telling me that story. It seemed like, so relevant to sales, and something that I think people gloss over sometimes, and they get so
Tony,
focused on the commission.
don't you think even more so today when we talk about
Oh yeah.
artificial intelligence? Okay. And I saw an interesting post. Some guy posted. It was a loan officer walking in a nice suit, like kind of trendy. Okay, all right, and kind of like Larry. Okay, and but he had his back to the camera, speaking on a phone, and the meme said, "AI will never replace a loan officer talking to their client." And it was like really just this guy walking. And it basically was saying, we still as loan officers, you have to pay attention to the sale. You communicate. It's just not going to be replaced, and I think some people think they're going to be replaced lately. I hear that
Right.
a little bit. I don't know, maybe 25, 30 years from now, but in our lifetime, I think we're still going to be very viable in this industry.
Well, I think people value human connection, and they value people's opinions and perspective, and a lot of those things, and experience. They want to know that you can share a story of something that's similar to their situation, that's relatable. Like
Yeah.
none of those things are really possible through AI. I mean, it can do the function of originating a mortgage, but
Yeah.
what it can't do is help someone understand, am I making the right decision? Does this lead to the next 2, 3, 4 phases of my life where I want to get to? Am I setting myself up? Can you give me the confidence to know that I'm making the right decision? It's not just initiating the transaction, locking in the rate, filling out the data and getting an approval. Like that's part of the job, but there's a whole other relationship part of the job. And that's the part that can never be, in my opinion, replaced by AI. And people just value that, some more than others, let's be honest, but
Yeah.
I think that people do value that. So interesting. All right. So, and I love that your sister was a processor, because I think every loan officer, I mean, I never was a processor, but those loan officers that were a processor or who had like someone like that really helped them understand like what a garbage file looked like.
Yeah.
They're so much better loan officers, and if you had someone that would be honest with you, like, Larry, your file's trash, man. Like, that probably helped you become a better loan officer as the years went on. There's no doubt.
It did. It did. And that other mentor too always taught me when he hired me, he's like, you take your processor is your boss in that day. I mean, that is really just like, that's who you work for, because that's going to make
Yeah.
you or break you, buddy. That was the,
100%. Yeah. I think it was different back then in the 90s when I was originating. I don't know. We were taught different, and good or bad. I think it was good. I think that there was a lot more on the loan officer back then, where I just did an episode, talking about things that you shouldn't do, like and so you got to delegate things out. But back then you kind of had to do everything yourself. Everyone didn't have assistants and LOAs and all this stuff like we have today. And, you learned more about putting a file together. And I think a lot of loan officers, especially those that got in during a really busy time, where there was more leads coming in than you could deal with, you had to delegate off a lot of that. And they just don't know how to do certain things with a loan file that's important.